Evening, everyone. Welcome to the September meeting of the Climate Resilience Committee. We will begin as usual with a statement from Mr. Goldberg about the virtual meetings and how they'll run. So let me turn it over to you, Mr. Goldberg.
Thank you. Any person who is a lobbyist pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 6 of the City Code must register with the City Clerk and comply with related city requirements for lobbyists before appearing before the Climate Resilience Committee. A person may not lobby a city official, board member, or staff member until registering. A copy of the code section about lobbyists available in the city's clerk's office or online on www.municode.com. In accordance with Section 2-888 of the City Code, written notice for this virtual meeting was provided to the city clerk at least 7 days prior to this virtual meeting. Since this is a virtual meeting, it is authorized by the governor of the state of Florida. Members of the public wishing to address the body may do so by visiting miamigov.com/virtualboards to submit their written comments via the online comment form. Members of the public may also call 305-250-5351 to provide comments via the dedicated City of Miami public comment voicemail. All comments submitted will be included as part of the public record for this virtual meeting and will be considered by the Climate Resilience Committee prior to any action taken. The Climate Resilience Committee will accommodate any speakers desiring to appear in person, subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Speakers who appear in person will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. Any persons experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19 will not be permitted to enter City Hall. All interested parties are required to abide by all state, county, and local emergency orders and are urged to remain at home and practice social distancing. If the proposition is being continued or rescheduled, the opportunity to be heard may be at such a later date before the Climate Resilience Committee takes action on the proposition. When addressing the Climate Resilience Committee, the member of the public must first state his or her name, his or her address, and what item will be spoken about. When the Climate Resilience Committee takes action or votes on any proposition before it, it shall do so by roll call vote, which shall be recorded by the board clerk and included in the record. Please silence all cell phones and noise-making devices. Any person with a disability requiring assistance, auxiliary aids, and services for this meeting may notify the board's liaison. The Climate Resilience Committee is using Zoom to hold its September 14th, 2020 virtual meeting. Zoom is a cloud platform for video and audio conferencing, collaboration, chat, and webinars across mobile devices, desktop, telephones, and room systems. In order to ensure the public has the ability to view the meeting, the Climate Resilience Committee will broadcast the meeting, and the meeting can be viewed live on Miami TV at miamigov.com/TV, through the city's YouTube channel and on Comcast Channel 77. The broadcast will also have closed captioning. Additionally, the Climate Resilience Committee has not selected a virtual platform that requires the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to watch this meeting. Aside from the Zoom platform and the fact that participants will be appearing remotely, the public will have no discernible difference in their ability to watch the meeting. The Climate Resilience Committee has developed several new methods of ensuring public comment for a virtual meeting. It has established two new options. The first new option allows the public to provide comments via the dedicated Climate Resilience Committee public comment voicemail by calling 305-250-5351, where the individuals will be able to leave a 2-minute message that will be played during the virtual Climate Resilience Committee meeting. The second new option allows the public to submit comments via the Climate Resilience Committee's online comment form. The comments submitted to the comment form have been distributed to the board members and city staff throughout the day, so the Climate Resilience Committee members can consider the comments prior to taking any action. Additionally, the online comment form will remain open during the meeting to accept comments and distribute to the Climate Resilience Committee members up until the chairperson closes public comment. For all the aforementioned options, all the comments received will be included in the public records of the meeting. For these two new options, the Climate Resilience Committee has also created a simple set of instructions explaining how the public can submit their comments with either option. Those instructions were provided in the notice to the public and published online at miamigov.com/virtualboards. Additionally, like any other Climate Resilience Committee meeting, the public may provide comment at City Hall. The Climate Resilience Committee has set up a terminal in the event members of the public travel to City Hall to provide public comment. However, due to COVID-19, all speakers desiring to appear in person will be subject to all applicable emergency measures in place to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. Speakers who appear in person will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. Any person exhibiting symptoms will not be permitted to enter City Hall, but will be able to participate through the remote options described above. These three public comment options established and provided for the virtual Climate Resilience Committee meeting comply with Section 286.0114 and Section 120.54 Florida statutes. The Climate Resilience Committee has published an agenda available upon request, as well as including the notice to the public pursuant to our city code, and the items including the items and topics that will be discussed at the virtual meeting. Additionally, the public has been given the opportunity to provide public comment during the meeting at the terminal at City Hall and the online public comment form, and within a reasonable proximity and time before the meeting and during the meeting via the public comment voicemail and online public comment form. Moreover, Section 286.0114, subparagraph 4, subparagraph C, Florida statutes specifically authorizes the Climate Resilience Committee to prescribe procedures or forms for an individual to use in order to inform the board or commission of a desire to be heard, to indicate his or her support, opposition, or neutrality on a proposition. The Climate Resilience Committee, through its 3 public comment options, have provided 3 different procedures and forms to indicate, among other things, support, opposition, or neutrality on an item and topics to be discussed at the meeting. The Climate Resilience Committee provided information on how to submit the comments in the notice to the public on a dedicated website and via its social media channels. Madam Chairwoman, are you comfortable with the notice provisions set forth and these uniform rules and procedures we've established for this virtual meeting? I think
Yep.
you.
Thank you very much,
Great.
Mr. Goldberg.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else?
From me, no.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so we'll begin the agenda with a roll call. So I'm going to just, to streamline things, I'll ask people to introduce themselves. We'll start with Robert.
Robert Evia, manager, City Manager.
Okay. Wayne.
Wayne Pathman, land use and zoning attorney, Pathman Lewis.
Okay. Patrick.
Patrick Rinn, I'm a marine scientist.
Keelan.
Hi, Keelan Bishop, biomedical scientist.
Thank you. And I'm Amy Clement. I'm an atmospheric scientist. So thank you everyone for joining us. Now the next thing on our agenda is public comment. So I'll turn to Ronaldo Rodriguez. If you can give us a summary of the public comments. And I believe there was one written comment I think we'll have time to read, if you wouldn't mind.
Correct, yeah. So one public comment and there were no voicemail recorded comments. But I can definitely read that one comment. Give me 1 second. Okay, so the comment is from Gabriel. Give me 1 second.
We have one more for the roll call, Amy.
Sorry, before you start that,
Yeah.
Ronaldo, let's just, Jose, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, Jose Regalado.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay, so we have a full house. All 7 of us are here. Oh, no, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. We're missing Ronaldo Borges, who won't be attending tonight. Okay, so back to you, Ronaldo.
All right, so the public comment, written public comment from Gabriel Requena. And it says, "Dear committee members and city officials, I am writing to you in the hopes that you and the committee members help me in bringing the following proposal to the forefront as a simple, cost-effective, and rapid response to one of the city's intentions towards addressing the climate crisis. I am not working for any climate-related NGO and am just an individual attempting to increase the speed and effectiveness of combating climate change. Resiliency is no doubt an integral part of the city's efforts, but reducing CO2 is also necessary, as identified on various occasions, as a component of the Working Climate Action Plan. I noticed the latest carbon emission inventory report issued by the government's operations emissions breakdown includes 24% from employee commute. COVID-19 has presented the solution, and I propose for the committee to consider and recommend to the City of Miami permanently implementing remote work for its employees. This is a step that can be immediately adopted and will not require significant overhead expenses to the city's budget. Additionally, it will serve as an indirect raise to employees not having to spend on transportation and other expenses. It will also improve quality of life for its stakeholders, and if done with diligence, can reduce the city's budget for commercial real estate expense and consequently reduce the energy needs and carbon footprint further by cutting on energy to run and maintain offices, etc. I know as a standalone resident, it will be a long shot to have any success in having the city adopt this solution, but I realize I have to try however possible to minimize the adverse effects of anthropogenic activities from escalating. I have other solutions that I don't believe have been considered that can contribute to the city of Miami becoming an altruistic partner in the fight against the climate crisis. Thank you for taking the time. P.S. The carbon mitigation plan is comprehensive and will entail time, but climate crisis is here and won't wait for reports. This can be a fast-track implementation that will have multiple benefits. And that's the end of the public comment.
Okay, thanks very much, Ronaldo. I think we'll be returning to that issue later in the agenda when we talk about the carbon mitigation plan, and so we can circle back to that. So next on our agenda is approval of the August 3rd minutes, which were circulated to you all by Ronaldo. Has everyone had a chance to look at them? And if so, I guess I'll be asking for a motion to approve them.
Move it.
Okay, Jose is moving. Is there a second? Robert, are you second? Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay, so we have, now we'll have a vote. In this case, what I'm going to ask for is if anybody is opposed to approving the minutes, let's speak now. Okay, so if no one is opposed, then we will approve the minutes and they can be entered into the public record. Okay, everyone, so next on the agenda is old business and review of action items. And having gone through the minutes, there's no specific old business or review of action items that we need to address. There's a number of ongoing issues which we see reflected in our agenda. So unless anyone knows of any action items they'd like to bring up at this point, I'll pause for a minute to give you a chance. Okay, so without further ado then, we will move to the presentation phase of the agenda. And the first presentation is going to be by Miami Waterkeeper, speaking about Biscayne Bay water quality issues. We have Rachel Silverstein, who's going to join us. So here she is. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for
How's
joining
everybody
us.
doing? Good to see this awesome group.
Thanks for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so I can share screen. Hold on a second. All right. Did that work? All right, perfect. So some of this is information that I also shared with the county commission about the fish kill. So you may have seen a little bit before, but there's also some new data hot off the press that I will share. And I know we have a lot of scientific minds on the board. So I still don't have all the answers, but here's where we are. So I'm Rachel Silverstein. I'm the executive director and waterkeeper of local nonprofit group Miami Waterkeeper. Our mission is to ensure swimmable, drinkable, and fishable water for all. And we do that by focusing on clean water and water pollution issues, habitat protection, and also sea level rise, which of course affects clean water and habitats, as well as many other things. And we have a three-pronged approach to addressing our focus areas that includes outreach and education. So just to specifically call out two programs that we have our Junior Ambassador program, that's environmental leadership training for high school students, and also our 1,000 Eyes on the Water program that I mentioned because with the fish kill and a lot of attention on Biscayne Bay, the number of reports that we've received about pollution events going on in the water has really increased. And we offer a training that we've now released virtually. It takes about an hour, but it'll train you to observe, document, and report pollution that you might see going about your daily life, which is particularly relevant for the city of Miami, because we do get multiple reports a day, or several a week, of plumes of sediment or oil spills and other things going on. And just last week, the city unanimously passed a stiffening of penalties for these kinds of pollution events. So happy to work with the city on that, but also encourage everyone to take the Thousand Eyes on the Water training. If you go to miamiwaterkeeper.org under programs, you'll see a Thousand Eyes. And it's a really great way to get involved and to help out. We also do our own peer-reviewed scientific research, and we stay on top of the latest scientific literature, and everything we do has the underpinnings in science. And we do advocacy as well. So we will work on policy items with elected officials, and we will also go to court to protect our environmental laws. I just want to point out also another key partnership with the city of Miami that we have is our water quality monitoring program, where the city actually sponsors sites throughout Biscayne Bay, where we do weekly bacteria monitoring, and then we report the levels of bacteria in the water through our free swim guide app. And you can see a picture of it here. You can look up your favorite watering hole or beach or spot to paddle and see what the latest water quality test results display. And it'll either be red or green for recommended swimming or not. And we also report Surfrider Miami and the Department of Health's data as well through Swim Guide. So our beautiful Biscayne Bay, of course, it generates billions of dollars for our economy every year. It's home to over a dozen threatened and endangered species, thanks in large part to lush seagrass meadows and mangroves. It is home to Biscayne National Park, the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve, the Bill Sadowski Critical Wildlife Area, which is so protected right near the Marine Stadium in the Port of Miami. You can't even kayak through it without a permit. It's classified as an outstanding Florida water, so critical for us for environmental reasons, but also for cultural and recreational reasons, and of course supporting thriving fisheries, tourism, and real estate economies as well. But unfortunately, on August 10th, our beautiful bay turned from that former picture into this graveyard, and we started to get reports. And actually, our sampling team was out at Morningside Park and noticed what we now know to be the epicenter or the start of the fish kill event that morning, where we saw dozens of dead fish in the water, which was quickly followed by many citizen reports of thousands and thousands of dead fish. We don't know the exact number. We're actually hoping that we can get a student to go through images like this and try to make estimates, which is what we're calling the most depressing internship project ever, to go through all these dead fish pictures. But we have just dozens and dozens of pictures like this that are really heartbreaking. We have done a quick analysis of the species of fish that you can see in these pictures, and it looks like there's dozens of fish, different species of fish represented amongst the dead here, including eels, lobsters, octopus, barracuda, pinfish, crabs, lots of pufferfish, lots of toadfish that you can see here. And toadfish are sort of like sentinel fish for Biscayne Bay. So they make burrows, and they burrow down when water quality or other things happen. They kind of hang out at the bottom and they don't really flee. So we would kind of expect that if we had poor water quality, like probably caused this fish kill, which was a low dissolved oxygen event, which I'll explain more in a moment, that they would be impacted. But they are also extremely hardy and can survive in really low oxygen conditions. So things must have been very bad to kill all of these toadfish. And many researchers at University of Miami actually do their physiological research on toadfish because they are very hardy. And then we also, interestingly, saw fish that live in the water column and can flee and are very fast. So it's kind of surprising that they couldn't escape whatever was going on, like barracuda and snook. So we had really a large range of both benthic species that live on the bottom in the seagrass and species that are more mobile. So we took all of these dozens and dozens of citizen reports of where they were seeing fish kills, and we put them into a Google map that you can see on our website live. And you can click through and there's photos, representative photos. So each of these spots is where dead fish were reported. But each of these represents usually more than one, sometimes dozens of individual reports. And we also tracked where algae blooms were reported, which I'll talk about in a second, and where white foam was reported. You can see all those different layers in the Google map. So we're working on doing more with this data, but I think it really brings to light the importance of having a community of engaged people who are watching out for the bay, because this report and this map was used by the DEP secretary in making management decisions, universities in deploying research, and other things, and it all came from the community being willing to sort of pitch in and reach out. So that's part of the Thousand Eyes on the Water, like, rapid response program idea. So a few days after the fish kill occurred, we ended up seeing these very severe algae blooms forming across northern Biscayne Bay, which is where, as you saw in the last picture, really the reports were located. It was much more of a northern bay phenomenon than southern bay, and I can explain the reasons for that too. But this algae bloom situation had a very strange diurnal or daily cycle, where in the morning it wouldn't be there, and then by early afternoon we would see white foam reported, and that's what we think is the buildup of organic matter in the water, and likely a result of all of the dead matter decomposing. And then by the afternoon, algae blooms had formed again, and then they were kind of gone in the morning. And so we're closely watching this, because the algae didn't disappear and the nutrients didn't disappear. So we're hoping that it didn't just sink and die and come back in a different form. So the first thing I want to point out here is that this is not normal. And one of the things we heard from a lot of people, and why we feel that we need to say this, is that, oh, this is just a normal summertime fish kill. And there are parts of Florida where they have every summer fish kills because of their pollution issues. And not only is this not normal anywhere, but it is especially not normal in Biscayne Bay. And in fact, this is, in recent memory, an unprecedented fish kill in terms of its location and scope and severity. So this is not something that happens frequently, although last summer around the same time, we did have a small fish kill that happened in the area. So it seems like this year it happened again for the same reasons, but it got much worse. And ultimately, why did this happen? Well, as I mentioned, it's a low dissolved oxygen event, which means that the wildlife literally did not have enough oxygen to breathe in the water. But ultimately, why did this happen? And it's because of pollution and too much pollution getting into the water. And I'm going to explain all that now. So specifically, the types of pollution that I'm talking about are nutrient pollutions. And nutrients are what's found in fertilizers, things like nitrogen and phosphorus. And they are very rich in waste. So sewage, septic tanks, stormwater runoff, and fertilizers all get into the water, and they essentially over-fertilize the microscopic algae that lives in the water, and it causes green water, like you can see here in the fertilizer pane. So how this works, when all of these 4 pollution sources end up discharging into Biscayne Bay, it increases the amount of algae and bacteria in the water. And algae and bacteria breathe oxygen just like all living things, both on land and in the water. And when there's too much algae and bacteria in the water using up all the oxygen, it can actually get so bad that there's not enough for the fish to breathe and other wildlife. And this gets particularly bad in hot temperatures because hot water holds less oxygen. And if it gets bad enough, the fish will actually die, and then you get fish kills like we saw. And then when that decomposes, and it's not just fish dying, it was also a lot of the seagrass that we saw mixed in with the fish too. So when all of that biomatter starts to decay, it releases more nutrients and more bacteria, which is another reason why we put out a big call to the public to get out and actually remove the fish. And we had an overwhelming response from the public on this too, of people willing to go out and like pick up decaying fish from on their weekends, which is pretty incredible. And the Fertile Earth Worm Farm also put bins out and volunteered to compost the fish waste that was collected. And so what you can have happen after the fish kills is this algae blooms, just like we saw. And we don't know for sure that the algae blooms were caused by the fish kills, but it's highly likely that they were related, and it's exactly what's predicted and what's happened in other places when there have been fish kills. And then you kind of get the cycle of when the algae starts to decay, then you get more nutrients and bacteria released, and so on and so forth. So we're hoping that we're not stuck in this cycle. But what we're seeing is really a loss of resilience in the bay in terms of being able to absorb stress. So when you have too much pollution and you get hot temperatures or you get low wind, because we also had very low wind during this time. And I haven't pulled the data for that yet, but that's sort of coming next. But we basically had hot, still water with a lot of freshwater flow that I'm going to discuss too. And when you have too much pollution in the water, when anything else stressful happens, it can push it over a threshold really easily, and you end up with catastrophic events like the fish kill. So the algae blooms that have been happening are also likely responsible for much of the seagrass die-off that has been happening in northern Biscayne Bay as well, actually all across Biscayne Bay, but particularly in northern Biscayne Bay. So this is Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve staff data. So they're doing a really cool monitoring project that they started last year in northern Biscayne Bay. And this data has become crucial for understanding what has happened in the fish kill. So the blue dots here are where they are collecting monthly water samples, and they're analyzing like over 30 different kinds of analytes in each of these samples. They're looking for sucralose, because that is not metabolized in people, and so it's common in wastewater. They're looking for fungicides, herbicides, chemicals, nutrients, all sorts of things in these monthly water samples from these locations. And then the 3 yellow pins that you see are data sondes, where they have actually affixed instruments to the bottom of the bay, and every month they go out and collect it. They download the data, and then they have the data from the last month. I think it collects every 15 minutes. And that's looking at things like temperature and dissolved oxygen and salinity. So some of that data I'm going to show you here. But I do want to point out that the LRO3 site is all the way up about 1 kilometer into the Little River, which is becoming clear as quite a hotspot for pollution. And then BB14 is out in the middle of the bay, but it's a place where it's lost a lot of its seagrass. And then JT71 has a little bit of healthier vegetation, and it's out even further from the canals where a lot of the pollution is coming from. So this is data from those 3 yellow pins, or the data sondes, and it's DEP's data, but Joe Serafy actually analyzed it. And we have started, during the actual fish kill crisis, we started a daily science coordination call where we were able to get DERM, DEP, FIU, NOAA, and other scientists in the community to coordinate on what we should be looking at, what data we should be getting, what do all the data mean, what are the clues, what are we seeing from the public. And it's been really interesting to hear the collaborations forming about circulation in the bay and pollution in the bay, and different hypotheses that we're planning on testing. And the next step is to take all the data that has been collected and to create a scientific report from that. So that's what we're working on next with the scientific group. And FIU, I think, is going to be taking the lead on that, because they also deployed 3 data sondes, or actually 1 data sonde just south of North Bay Village that I should include a picture of, because it was really critical during those first days. They scrambled really fast to get it out there, and it's pretty cool because you can actually see it live. It has like solar panels on top, and it sends the data. So if you go to FIU Crest Research Buoy, you can actually, they deployed 2 other buoys too, and you can actually see in real time what the dissolved oxygen levels and temperature and chlorophyll levels. And chlorophyll is the pigment that's in algae, so it's basically a proxy for how much algae is in the water. So you can see all those levels change during the day. It's really interesting, so definitely check out that website. But this is from the DEP data that Joe put together. And any time that the black lines cross below the horizontal red line, that means that the oxygen went below 1 milligram per liter, which is hypoxia. So that's not going to support life anymore. And what you can see in the bottom pane is the Little River location. You can see that it was hypoxic around starting around August 10th or 11th for 72 hours, which is unprecedented. When we had the small fish kill last year, there was hypoxia for 4 hours. So it's much worse this year. You can see JT71 was not so bad. And the BB14 site that has lost a lot of its seagrass vegetation, it's out a little bit of ways from the Little River, had 32 hours of hypoxia. So several things happen when you have low dissolved oxygen from, too many things breathing in the water. And it basically switches the chemistry of the whole system to being a system that breathes oxygen to a system that does not breathe oxygen. And the system that does not breathe oxygen causes a lot of hydrogen sulfide gas to be released, which if you've been around mangroves, sometimes mangroves have like a sulfury smell. And a lot of people were reporting terrible sulfur smells in this area. And what they were smelling was the release of hydrogen sulfide. When that's released, it's highly toxic to wildlife. And the thought is, and what Joe was hypothesizing was that it can actually kind of drug the fish and they can't escape anymore if there's a sudden release of hydrogen sulfide. So that's kind of interesting, and there's plans to potentially try to recreate the conditions in the lab to test that. Of course, that's when the fish kills started. And then this is data from that Chris Langdon collected from University of Miami. He went out to Morningside and took oxygen profiles. So the sondes are stuck on the bottom, but this is what's going on in the water column. So across the bottom is depth. And then you can look at oxygen, salinity, and temperature. And the red dots are from Friday the 14th. The green, let me make sure I can see it. The green dots are from the 15th, and then a few days later, the blue dots are from the 19th. And you can see the oxygen levels on the 14th. The red dots were very low throughout the whole water column, but then they increased on Saturday and by the 19th. Now, what else was happening at Morningside? Well, just after Chris took the red dot data, the city of Miami deployed their stormwater pumps for aeration. So this is something that we requested because we were getting lots of reports of fish struggling for air. And so the aeration took place at Morningside, at Albert Park, and at Margaret Pace Park, and for a few days. And the goal there was just to give some wildlife some refugia from this ongoing low oxygen condition and to stop more animals from dying. Moving forward, this is like thinking of putting the bay on life support, and it's only going to help a very small area and only while the pumps were operating. Long term, I'm now getting flooded with inquiries from oxygenation companies because sometimes they do these in ponds and things that don't have the proper circulation. It's not something we should need to do in Biscayne Bay. Moving forward, my focus and what I think our focus should be is really on addressing the pollution issues rather than thinking about investing more in aeration equipment for the bay. But this is not perfect data to study the impact of the aeration because we didn't have a control. It was just like an emergency deployment. But anecdotally, it does seem like it worked because by the next day after the pumps have been working for 24 hours and for the next few days to the blue dots, the oxygen levels really increased. And you can actually see other improvements because if you look at the salinity, and this is also key, On Friday, the 14th, the red dots, you can see the water is less salty at the surface, and then it gets saltier as you go down, which indicates that there might be some kind of stratification in the water column, so that the surface layer was fresher sitting on top of a saltier layer, and that can happen when mixing, and that will decrease mixing between the bottom and the top, and so it can mean that less oxygen is getting mixed into the bottom of the bay. And that can happen when you have really high flows of fresh water that come out of the canals and it sits on top of the bay and it stops mixing. So you can see that by the green dots on Friday, that salinity barrier is kind of breaking up, and then it's totally broken up by the 19th. And that's Chris Langdon hypothesizes that, again, is due to the pumps. But again, it could have just been a natural change in conditions. The winds picked up, it rained a little bit. So it's anecdotal, but it's still very interesting. And then there's a theory that this was just due to hot water. But if you look actually on the 14th, it's cooler than on the 15th and the 19th. And so even though the oxygen levels got better, so when it got hotter, the oxygen levels also went up. So it doesn't seem to be directly tied to temperature. And there's other data that Joe Serafy has analyzed from DEP that also suggests that it's decoupled from temperature. And it's not just the influence of temperature happening here. That I didn't put in the presentation, but just so you know. So again, as I've mentioned several times, we've had this major seagrass die-off, and particularly in northern Biscayne Bay. This is the Julia Tuttle Basin. This is 2011. The dark area in the middle here is seagrass. And then by 2016, you can see we've lost over 80% of the seagrass out of this basin. And this is where the BB14 site is located that I mentioned. And you can see Little River. Can you see my mouse? Okay, so Little River is here. And Morningside, where the fish kill was happening, was here. So you can see right adjacent to it, we've had a major loss of seagrass. And I don't think that that's coincidental. And I think that the same nutrient pollution that caused the fish kill also probably wiped out the seagrass. And seagrass also produce oxygen and can help oxygenate and keep the water healthy. So there's some thought that potentially the loss of this seagrass also led to lower oxygen levels than normal in this area. But we're still investigating that because it seems like some macroalgae came in, Halimeda, and is growing along the bottom, and it also can photosynthesize and produce oxygen. So it may have replaced that function of the seagrass, but we're not sure if it's like a one-to-one relationship yet. So we're still looking into that. So we know that seagrass loss and nutrient loading is a really common connection in estuaries. So this is data from other locations around Florida, not Biscayne Bay, but you can see that there's between total nitrogen in the water and loss of seagrass, there's a very tight relationship. And David Chin this year looked at the total nitrogen loading in Biscayne Bay and was able to predict very accurately the amount of seagrass that he would expect looking at this curve and how much seagrass we've actually lost in the bay. So then this is the other interesting factor that I mentioned, freshwater flow out of the canals. This is a graph Chris Langdon put together from the South Florida Water Management District's data. So the C7 canal is the Little River, and the C8 canal is right next to it is the Biscayne Canal, both draining into northern Biscayne Bay. But we had historically high flows from the Little River Canal. This is over the last 10 years. And starting in May, we started to have unprecedented flows out of the Little River. The South Florida Water Management District has told me that this is not due to management changes. This is just because we have had higher rainfall this year. So we plotted the rainfall, and the rainfall does not look abnormally high. It's a little bit high, but not abnormally high for this year. So it doesn't seem to explain why we had this happen in the Little River. So this certainly could have created a freshwater lens that sat on top of the water that caused a low oxygen condition below it because we had too much algae and bacteria in the water. And these are all hypotheses that we're still examining. But again, looking at Little River, this is, again, the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve data from before the fish kill. I think she presented this in January from her previous year of data. Laura Eldridge presented this to the Biscayne Bay Task Force. The yellow or mustard yellow and olive green bars that you see sticking up in every single one of these graphs is the data that they got from the Little River. So you can see Little River is very high in ammonia, very high in chlorophyll, which again is a proxy for algae, very high in organic carbon, very high in phosphorus, very high in TSS is total suspended solids. So it's like how much like gunk is floating around in the water. Very high in total nitrogen. So we clearly have a Little River problem. And Little River is also surrounded by septic tanks. It has a lot of industrial runoff that's not particularly well regulated. So I'm going to get into a little bit more about what to do about this in a second. How am I doing on time, Amy, by the way?
Okay, let's
Not
see.
too much.
You have about 10 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, just piecing all of this together, it looks like there's some red arrows pointing at inputs from Little River. Not that this is by any means the only pollution source. And this red bar that you also see somewhat elevated, the DM08 site, is the site right inside the bay and outside the mouth of Little River. So we've known that these issues were a problem for a long time. In 1949, this article came out, which have I shared this with you before? That's I would love to send it to you to distribute to the group. It is jaw-dropping, this article about pollution in Coconut Grove and also environmental justice issues that are commented on here, but also not commented on. It's very interesting. But I can send this to you. Aaron Stauber, our intern, found this article, but they pull out all of these pollution factors in Biscayne Bay, and the author of the article lives in Coconut Grove. And they talk about septic tanks overflowing when it rains. This is a 1970 report, pollution of the waters of Dade County, Florida. This is pre-EPA. So the Department of the Interior came and did this study. They spent 3 days and wrote this whole report about what was polluting Biscayne Bay. And it is pretty shocking to read also. But ultimately, their number one conclusion was that septic tanks widely used in Dade County are public health hazards and contribute to over-fertilization and algal nuisances in adjacent waterways. They also said in 1970 that no permit should be granted for future construction of septic tank systems. Well, guess what? We're still putting in new septic tanks in Miami-Dade. We also had, this is last August, so almost exactly a year before the fish kill started, the grand jury report came out warning that Biscayne Bay was at a tipping point. Again, these are not new issues. We've known that these things are issues for a long time. Last year, also, the Biscayne Bay Task Force was formed. They just gave their recommendations to the county commission that were adopted, and we're really hoping that the commission acts on many of those recommendations in the task force. Again, almost exactly a year before the fish kill, this key paper was released by NOAA warning of a regime shift in Biscayne Bay. And NOAA in 2015 named Biscayne Bay one of their habitat focus areas. And Miami Waterkeeper has actually been the local partner on that since then. The Habitat Focus Area program picked 10 locations around the country for high economic and environmental importance that was facing a tipping point. And Biscayne Bay was chosen because it was at a tipping point for nutrient pollution. So they've been knowing that this was happening and coming for a long time. So they did this study that looked at 20 years of DERMS data from Miami-Dade County's data. And it's kind of hard to see this report, but this is the giant red flashing arrow that we have a problem, and that this study came out a year ago. And we've known that the seagrass has been dying for years, and it's been a habitat focus area for years. But essentially what NOAA said in this study is exactly what happens, that excessive nutrients in aquatic environments from sources like fertilizer runoff and septic system discharge can lead to algae blooms and low oxygen levels that can kill fish and impact central fish habitats. And Chris Keble said, if current management practices continue, it could lead to a regime shift in Biscayne Bay from one with clear water and lush seagrass meadows to a murky system dominated by phytoplankton, that's algae. So again, back to the septic tank issue, there are over 100,000 still remaining in Miami-Dade. And after that 1970 study came out about the waters of Miami-Dade that said no new septic tanks, the federal government gave Miami-Dade County over $500 million in 1970 to construct our 3 sewage treatment plants that we have today and to get rid of all the septic tanks. So we built the sewage treatment plants, but we did not get rid of the septic tanks. And now our sewage treatment plants also need to be redone because they're now also over 50 years old. Over half of the 100,000 septic tanks are in surrounding northern Biscayne Bay. And they're on very small lots in the Little River area in particular that don't have the appropriate drainage fields that would never have been permitted today. And they were permitted when you only needed 6 feet of dry ground between the bottom of the tank and the water table to filter the waste. Whereas now we require 2 feet. But the county also issued a report in November of 18 saying that 56% of the septic tanks in the county already don't have that 2 feet because of sea level rise and the rising water table. So there are over 50,000 properties in the county in 2020 that do not have a functioning waste system. And it has been almost 2 years since that report came out, and nothing to very little has happened as a result. Also in 1970, after that report came out, the county passed an ordinance that said once the sewers are built, because Miami developed so fast that it actually developed before the sewer systems were laid. They said once the sewage infrastructure gets here, you have to hook up. But Durham has given over 95% of exemptions to this hookup ordinance, and therefore we still have 12,000 septic tanks that are literally right next to sewer mains that are not hooked up. The main problem here is that how this operates is the homeowner, the property owner, gets a giant bill one day that they're required to hook up, and these are big bills, like $15,000+ bills. And so, of course, it is not a popular program, and rightfully so. So one of the things that we really need to figure out as a community is, like, if we think that this is important, we need to come up with a way to fund the septic to sewer conversion. And there are lots of ways to do it that don't involve sending homeowners very large bills. So that should become a focus if that's a priority. And I think it should be, because people need waste infrastructure, much as we don't like to think about it. There's also no requirement to inspect, maintain, or disclose septic tanks when you sell a home or to renting. A lot of this is problems with renters too. People rent properties, and then nothing is forcing landlords to maintain the septic systems, and they can't afford to move. And there's health problems that are created, environmental justice problems that are created. We really need to be regulating this better. Like the sewage treatment system is regulated, the septic system should be too. And that's something we can do right away that doesn't involve major infrastructure project. So this is also something we proposed to the county, but the city has already done it. Go City of Miami. So we were very pleased, like right before the shutdown, we were able to work with the city on what is now the strongest fertilizer ordinance in the state. So this was already adopted by the City of Miami, which is fantastic. And we're now working with the city on producing educational materials and point of sale materials so that when people are buying fertilizer, they're aware of the new recommendations. So definitely we have to fix our sewage infrastructure. We've got to get rid of septic tanks in urban environments. We have to enact a fertilizer ordinance, which the city has done. Thank you. And we have to figure out ways to deal with stormwater too, because of course, as this board knows, that is an ever increasing problem, and we can't just be pumping the stormwater directly back into the bay when we have flooding. And because we do have flooding and a very high water table, we have a limited amount of options here. So there's a lot of recommendations that we have for stormwater, but also this is an area that we're going to have to find holistic solutions region-wide for dealing with all this extra water that's coming into our streets. I I can take questions.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Excellent presentation. Let me turn to the committee and see, are there questions, comments, thoughts for Rachel?
Hi, Rachel. It's Wayne Pathman. How are you?
Hey, Wayne, how's it going?
Good. Hope you're well. I have a quick question. Do you see a conflict from the standpoint of what cities, counties, state are trying to do with pumping water, off our streets into the bay, and what you're trying to do, and what we've now seen with this fish kill and all the things that you just spoke about? How do we remedy or deal with that, with one issue of trying to keep water off the streets and at the same time trying to save the bay?
Yeah, so this is certainly a tough one. And whenever we talk about stormwater issues and needing to filter it and treat it more, what we hear is, well, but we have to get it off the streets and it's flooding. And I think that there are solutions that probably address both of those things. So a couple of things that we've pulled out is, one is to look, and I was recently in California, and everywhere in California there are stormwater parks, and all the parks are meant to capture and filter stormwater before, and there's native landscaping before it hits any bodies of water, and there's wetlands that are formed with stormwater to clean it. And then when I propose that, I always hear, well, we just don't have the space in Miami. And I think we do have the space. I just think we have to think creatively about how we're using the space and to set aside some public space for parks and also for stormwater treatment. So we can also think of our swales. We can think of the medians in the middle of streets. We can think of the end of our streets. We can think of the edges of the canals. We can think of, we have over 50% non-compliance with stormwater retention on properties around the county. So people are over-paving their properties, and they're required to keep a certain amount of stormwater on site, and they don't. We don't have, with the county, a comprehensive digitized map of even the stormwater outfalls in the county, because each municipality has outfalls, and the county has outfalls, the state has outfalls. That's another first step. We need better best management practices for dealing with stormwater outfalls. I think that it would be a great idea too to do some RFPs, to try some pilot studies, and to do some pilot projects for some of the innovative technologies that are out there that deal with stormwater. I'm not an engineer. I cannot recommend them. I don't know if they work, but we hear from people all the time that there are technologies out there. I know the city's been working on redoing their stormwater master plan. We're trying to think about that at the county level as well. And I think more monitoring of outfalls and what's coming out the outfalls. There has to be a way to just store the water somewhere safely where it can be treated before it's put directly back into the water, because the temporary pumps that are deployed are really cause pollution issues, but they're also just a Band-Aid, and we need something more holistic, as this board is grappling with. But those are some starting points, I think, thinking about stormwater.
But as my question is really kind of direct and current, that this committee in the past has heard about programming, not just in Miami, but Miami Beach, where stormwater pumps have been put in, and they're directly, the outfalls are going into Biscayne Bay. We've had scientists from FIU, University of Miami, come and tell us that the impacts are significant.
Yeah.
Of course, we didn't have any fish kills. Now we have it, and now we see the impact of it. But at the same time that you're trying to do the work that you're doing, and we're seeing the impacts to the bay, we're adding more pumps that are pumping water into the bay. So it seems like if we're spending money with the right hand to put more pumps in, and then the left hand, we're trying to clean it up. Doesn't seem like the best strategy. So how does this committee work with you to get that message across that, it's, thankfully we don't have the fires that we have in California, but it seems like we're starting a fire and then we're going to put it out later. We figure out, okay, well, how to put it out. So
yeah, we
need to do something better than that. And I think that's what this committee and your committee was formed for. So how do we strategize to do that?
We would love to work with this board on figuring out stormwater solutions and options. And I know Alan has experience in this too, and that the city's been working on some initiatives. I think I don't know that there are easy solutions to this one, but I know that there are solutions out there. And I think that there's some immediate low-hanging fruit, like where are all of the storm drains? Let's monitor all of them to understand where this is all coming from. And let's do better than pumping everything directly into the bay, because it's not, a stormwater retention pond. It's Biscayne Bay. It's an outstanding Florida water. It's a national park. So I don't know. I would look into solutions of thinking of, I know the city of Miami Beach is creating stormwater parks. I know the Jose Marti Park Resilient Redesign has stormwater filtration options, which is, I think, great. I think we need to think about every single street as having not just how do we get the stormwater off the street as fast enough, but also how do we slow it down and give it safe places to go so that it can be cleaned along the medians, along the swales. I just think that there's options out there. We just have to put some pilot projects out there and try them, and then scale up.
Thank you. I was gonna, the stormwater master plan development is on our docket for this fall, and so this is something that I think it will be really important to bring all those pieces together. So thanks for asking that, Wayne. Are there other questions from the committee or comments?
I have a question. And it's, first of all, hi, Rachel. That was an amazing presentation. I learned so much. So thank you for presenting today. I want to ask about the infrastructure that exists for the research that you all are doing to get to the bottom of the fish kill, and also to vet potential solutions, right? To make sure that they're actually effective as proposed and getting to the root issue instead of being band-aids. How are you, and this may be slightly outside of the purview of the committee, but I don't apologize. How are you funding this work, right? Is this a partnership with different municipalities or with the county to figure this out? And to funnel these results right back into policy solutions? Or is that extra step do you have that extra step of finding something and then advocating for that something to be taken under consideration as policy measures are made and adopted?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So we don't have specific fish kill funding because it came up as an emergency, but many of these nutrient pollution issues are long-term campaigns of Miami Waterkeeper that we've been working on for a long time. And I'm sorry, the background noise over here. So, our septic campaign was originally funded by the Miami Foundation, and we've been working on that for many years. So now here we are with this crisis, and we're kind of ready to go on that. I think the next phases are, I think the stormwater issues is going to become front and center as well. It looks like we're getting great traction on the fertilizer issues that have various funders too. But we are a grassroots organization that's funded by the community from grants, from donations from members on that front. But in terms of the science coordination, it's actually been very interesting, and Alan's participated in many of our calls. It was kind of an ad hoc group that came together during the fish kill, and I kind of just started a daily call for anyone who wanted to participate and share information. And I kind of added anybody who had emailed me, and now it's turned into a real scientific collaboration group between DERM and DEP and the universities. And everybody's saying, we didn't know everybody else was doing this work, and it's actually been a really nice outcome. And I think because we're small and nimble and we don't have bureaucracy to overcome, we can kind of just bring everyone together in a more informal way. And I'm sure that I'm missing people from the group too, because of how it did come together. So if anybody wants to join please email me, rachel@miamiwaterkeeper.org, and I will add you to the group, and you just join when you can. It was daily during the fish kill. It's now become a weekly call, and hopefully, soon we can make it monthly, but there's still enough going on right now that people want to meet weekly. And the next steps, as I mentioned, are to create a scientific report. And then Also, now we're realizing how much more monitoring we need. And so the plan is to kind of create a strategic monitoring network for Northern Biscayne Bay. And everybody's kind of discussing their wish list. And then we're going to go try to get funding for it from different funders to try to get more SONs, more collaboration. But it's been really cool to see, actually. One of the bright spots has been people getting involved in reporting and being willing to clean up, and then also, the scientific collaboration that's come out of it. And similarly with organizations advocating for Biscayne Bay, we've also set up a coordinating group for organizations that if anybody wants to join, please email me and I will add you to that group that we're meeting once a month before the commission meetings to discuss the agendas.
I see.
Thank you.
Your question, Keelan.
It did. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And just, kind of for the record, this to me is reminiscent of a conversation that we've been having for a minute about the city's infrastructure and capacity to conduct research, especially during times of crisis, when it is necessary, when we're, being pressed for solutions to things that we don't know how to solve. And so I just want to highlight the fact that what we are doing right now is depending on the community-based organization, nonprofit sector to do this work. And we should have the infrastructure as a city or as government to do some of that. Maybe not all of it, but we definitely, I don't think, should be reliant on entities without taking a leading role, whether that is funding, whether that is, just coordination. We should have some kind of contribution to that effort, some kind of measurable, significant contribution.
Thanks, Keelan. That's a great point. I want to, I see Alan has his hand up and I saw Jose's hand go up too. We have some people who are waiting to present. We will, what I suggest is we return to this conversation when we get to the Biscayne Bay Task Force bullet, because a lot of what Rachel is recommending is some are things that the Biscayne Bay Task Force have recommended, and she's on that as well. So I think this
actually not on the task force, but
so that we can return to this discussion. Jose, is that Alan is okay for you to hold your comments until then, so we can let the other presenters talk?
Absolutely, on the bigger picture, but I just would like to say thank you to Rachel, because when this first came up and we started getting asked questions, when you go to Durham or you go to DEP, there isn't any one entity who's responsible for the bay. Everybody has a part on it, and there wasn't the collaboration there. And Rachel was the one who brought federal, state, local government agencies and other groups to really put together a working group in a matter of a few days that was very effective management. So I would love to really commend you for being the integrator that helped to address this issue.
Thank you, Alan. That means a lot. Everybody's really pitched in and been willing to help the Bay. So it's been definitely a positive outcome of the whole thing.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thanks for all your hard work, and thank you for your presentation, and I look forward to ongoing discussions. Thank you. Okay, so next on our agenda is a presentation from the Women's Fund on hurricanes, risk, and resilience. The presentation is going to be given by Carolina Garcia, Maria Meyer, and so Carolina, Maria, I will turn it over the floor to you. You should have the ability to share your screen if you have there we go. And so in terms of timing, you have 10 minutes. So I apologize that we ran over a little bit. So take it away. Thank you.
Great. And we have Sky Wheeler as well with us, right? Sky is there. So good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing us to join you this afternoon. My name is Maria Meyer, and I'm the board chair of the Women's Fund of Miami-Dade. And many of you may be familiar with the Women's Fund. It's 26 years of Women Strong, World Strong here in Miami-Dade. And what we do is we focus with the gender lens. I have to first say thank you to Rachel as well for all of her work. And this is just, you know, I'm a huge supporter and believer as well. And the collaborative effort really is what Women's Fund is all about as well. So when the Women's Fund is based on our work on several different pillars, of course, gender lens does affect economics. It does affect economic mobility, leadership. Most definitely, gender lens is necessary to apply for freedom from violence, but it also applies to climate change. And so as international studies are coming out and even more international research is being done than local, which we all collaboratively do hope to change with you, bouncing off that last comment, we do need more research here, and the Women's Fund Miami-Dade is very interested in working with our community on that gender lens. So women and girls are often disproportionately and negatively affected. Viviana, if you can go forward. The reason that we ended up asking to present to you all today is because we meet monthly, and I'm representing literally thousands of people who are interested in gender issues in our community. We met on August 6th with some really brilliant folks, including your own Alyssa Farina, Sky Wheeler, who's going to be presenting with us here. Dr. Clement actually gave us some factual keynote speech to start out. Mayra Cruz from the Climate Resilience Program Manager at Catalyst Miami, who many of you, I'm sure, are very, very familiar with, and Dr. Cheryl Holder. And if you have not seen Dr. Holder's TED Med presentation, I highly recommend that. It's actually absolutely essential viewing about climate change and how it affects our health. So that Impact Collaborative is so tremendously powerful that we decided to work together. So not only are the clear facts there that women are disproportionately affected by climate change in economics, in resources, poverty, the kinds of employment that women get, and their disproportionate carrying of many of the family responsibilities. But also, we'd like to point to the last one, systematic violence, which does escalate in times of instability. And our research shows that climate is a huge influence on domestic violence. And if you look at some of our domestic violence statistics in Miami, they're tremendously high. And if you look at the pressure on law enforcement and budgets, there are many different ways to lead to the knowledge that we do need to be paying special attention to climate. So one of the things that the Women's Fund Miami-Dade does is we work collaboratively with other organizations and with our community on awareness campaigns. I'm highlighting this one because the head of the domestic violence courts, the state attorney's office, head of domestic violence, and the leaders from our coordinated victims assistance center all came to us and said, we have a huge issue during times of COVID. We have international statistics showing up to 80% increases in calls. Miami-Dade County is lower than average. People were not calling. They were not, for many, many reasons, probably because they were stuck at home and because they weren't certain that services would be available. The community did believe that it was important to get out this message. We had this very successful campaign, and of course not due just to this campaign, but because of the entire dedication by our community, the calls are reported now by the Coordinated Victims Assistance Center to be up, and we are actually stretching capacity now, although we know that the COVID statistics have not gone down in our community. So I want to highlight that as a case that is pertinent to this discussion. Once again, just a focuser, we do have the United Nations studying in depth and clarifying that it does exacerbate the already increasing number of complex emergencies disproportionately affect women and girls. So I just want to bring this Stop Sex Trafficking campaign up that you might know. We were the official Stop Sex Trafficking campaign of the Miami Super Bowl host committee with the state attorney's office, and a huge collaboration across our community on this issue. The state attorney, when I started becoming aware of these issues about 8 years ago, said she was just becoming aware of these issues. For human trafficking, there were like 3 or 4, maybe 5 cases in process. Now there are over 500. And the state attorney, as the strong representative and leader that she is very clear in saying that sometimes we don't know what we're seeing because we're used to thinking that it's something else. Sometimes we don't all see that what we thought was a long-term profession, or we thought there was personal decisions, really are human trafficking. And I feel in our Impact Collaborative at the Women's Fund Miami-Dade, we realize the same thing is happening with climate change. We didn't really see it. We didn't really recognize it. We're little by little getting statistics, and we are getting information from the news. But now, after this Impact Collaborative, we felt strongly enough that we were well informed that we wanted to come not only as constituents, but as conveners and connectors that we are. So all of the research and the work that you do, we can help support into our community, share it with others, and frankly, keep the pressure up, because this is imminent, it is important, and it does affect human lives. So I want to go ahead and share now and take over to my wonderful colleague, Sky Wheeler from Human Rights Watch. She's going to talk about specific work that international organization has brought here to our own community. Sky?
Thank you very much, Maria. And thank you all so much for having us. It's really a real honor to be able to talk to you a little bit about why Human Rights Watch, an international organization, is investing in looking at this particular project, and why we're doing this advocacy research project on the climate crisis in the US, and specifically looking at the impact of heat on pregnancy health. So as everyone on this call knows, heat is a significant health issue, and it's one that's growing. But so far, what we've found is that the focus by the counties, the cities, and to a lesser extent, the states that are beginning to really tackle heat as a health issue, the focus has mostly been on mortality. And so on older people and people with pre-existing conditions who very unfortunately die in higher numbers as temperatures climb, and especially during extreme heat and heat waves. But heat is also a reproductive justice issue. And one reason for this is because of the link between heat and adverse birth outcomes. So here on the first slide, which I think you can all see, is a couple of studies that came out of California. One study that found an increase of 10 degrees Fahrenheit in the feels-like temperature corresponded to an 8.6% increase in premature births. And a later study by the same author, about a 10% higher risk of stillbirth, with a 10 degree Fahrenheit apparent temperature increase. And if you could just go to the next slide. So a recent JAMA review paper came out on this, and it's probably about the 5th or 6th review paper on this subject. And this came out a couple of months ago, and they looked only at studies that had been conducted in the US. And they looked at millions and millions and millions of studies. The studies that they looked at covered millions and millions of births across the US. And 9 out of the 10 studies found a significant exposure, significant association between heat exposure and pregnancy adverse birth outcomes. So on preterm birth, they looked at 5 studies, and 4 found a significant association with a really quite significant increases in the risk from 8.6% to as high as 21% increase in preterm birth. And then there were also studies that looked at low birth weight, and 2 out of 2 studies found a stillbirth, an increase in stillbirth. So as you all also know, heat impacts different people differently. But heat is also a very important justice issue in a different sense. Heat is not distributed equally either. So there have been a few really excellent studies this year that have built on earlier work that are showing what many town planners already know, which is poorer areas in US cities and often where communities of color live are often hotter than more wealthy areas, and sometimes with quite significant differences in degrees temperature between a wealthier, lusher area and a poorer neighborhood that has more tarmac, more concrete, and worse planned buildings. So not only are Black women in the US often, especially in urban areas, dealing with more heat, but these same populations and communities and neighborhoods that are hotter also often already have higher rates of adverse birth outcomes. So if you look at this next slide, you can see that these are all CDC numbers. We're looking at a 50% higher rate of preterm birth already amongst African American women, low birth weight, twice as high, stillbirth weight, much higher again for non-Hispanic Black women than for white women. So what we're looking at is an emerging threat, a threat that's growing, that is having an impact on these very important reproductive and pregnancy outcomes that go on to have a huge impact on an individual's life. And it's compounding an already pre-existing inequality. So our argument with all of this is that we need to see pregnancy in the context of a warming world, that as town planners, as health professionals, as policymakers begin to grapple with heat in a more serious way. As you all probably also already know, 2020 was one of the warmest summers on record so far. We need to include pregnancy, and we need to also make sure that we're including racism in our calculations and that we're including the reproductive justice framework. We've looked at many heat advisories, and here are just a few examples: the Department of Health, CDC, Home Health and Human Services. You can see there are lots of vulnerable groups, but pregnant people are missed out from all of these. And then just to raise one more issue, as we are talking about Florida, the last slide, please. Sorry. The next one. Yeah, so, Miami-Dade County, obviously we've got these massive hikes in temperature predictions. But so far, looking at what's being done in terms of planning and looking forward, what we're seeing is that while other vulnerable populations are included, athletes, older people, even looking at many cities are beginning to look at race and poverty in their calculation of the impacts of heat. But again, we're seeing pregnant people left out, as are often farm workers who, of course, are exposed to huge amounts of heat and often have very little choice over what they do. And there's lots of associated human rights issues around choice during work and being able to get accommodations for pregnant people of any kind, let alone to be able to avoid large amounts of heat. So this is just one example of ways that governments can do more to protect people from heat, especially the most vulnerable. There have been advocacy done by farm worker rights groups and others for a heat standard for Florida, and that's something that we strongly support, as well as a federal heat standard. But we also have a few recommendations specifically for you. And Maria, do you want to just talk through recommendation 1?
Yes. We want to make sure that you hear our voices, and that's why we're switching back and forth. We need to help you get attention to these issues as well. So before we read our recommendations, we just want to offer our services as people who do convene and do speak up. And if it is possible for whatever recommendations that you see fit to move forward for us to continue to support those within our administrations. We welcome very much the invitation to join you when these issues are being presented, because we do represent a large number of not only women and girls, but people who care about the health of women and girls in our community. So, recommendation number 1, the resolution calling on the city of Miami to declare extreme heat a hazard and to create a heat action plan with a strong focus on equity and health impacts, including specific impacts on pregnancy health. It's not always seen. It's very much necessary to make that seen across the globe when natural disasters happen. Actually, the first to be taken away from prime healthcare are women who are pregnant. That's something that happens on a regular day. So we need pregnancy and pregnancy health to be seen. Recommendation to especially focus on especially vulnerable populations, such as farm workers that have been left out of planning. We also ask that it include outreach to vulnerable populations, widespread education, responses to early symptoms of heat illness, as well as very concrete actions like more water fountains, cooling centers in high priority areas, and mobile options for those with accessibility issues. And lastly, for this recommendation, the plan should lay out how different local departments can work together to integrate these heat solutions.
And in the meantime, our recommendation is the City of Miami should issue heat advisories, dangerous temperatures, and include pregnant people in those advisories. Still a population left out of many advisories from other cities. Also increase funding to support people who need utility support so that they can continue to run their AC or fans or other cooling devices, as well as weatherization funding for sustainable cooling in the long term.
And our third recommendation, that the committee should work to ensure that essential bodies, including the City of Miami Office of Resilience, is better funded, so you are able to increase capacity to do the life-saving work to help our residents face current and predicted climate change impacts. We don't want to be scared. We want to be prepared. And we thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Maria and Sky. We are a little bit over time. So I'm going to give the committee a opportunity for brief comments. And I really appreciate the concrete recommendations, and it's definitely something we can continue going forward as we discuss this issue. But let me turn to the committee. Does anyone have a question or comment for Maria and Sky?
Hi, Myra. This is, I guess, in my wheelhouse. I'm the emergency manager for the city. So this year we did release extreme heat advisories. We do have a notification system, but it's an opt-in system. So I'd like to work with you if you can, I guess through Ray, if we can speak after on how we can expand our notification within the community, especially in vulnerable populations. We're more than willing to do that. And also, I'd like to see the JAMA article, if you can forward that to me as well. You can get my contact info through Ray or through Amy, and we can set up a meeting. We'll talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. I think that's excellent. I'll also echo the point that in the presentation where the heat, we're just getting a sense of how disparate heat exposure is across our city. We're going to be looking at some data later in the fall that the Office of Resilience from the city partnered with NOAA to measure. And what we see is there are really big disparities about local heat exposure. So I do think it's something that we should take into consideration when we're making heat advisories. That one city. There's not one value for across the city. So look forward to this as a really important topic. And thank you so much for bringing it up. and look forward to discussions.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you. Look forward to connecting. Great.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, so apologize, we're a little bit behind schedule, but now we'll turn quickly to Jonathan Klopp, who's going to talk, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, Klopp, who is going to be talking about building efficiency and the 305 initiative. Jonathan, floor is yours. And
Hello,
I'm sorry,
thank you for having me. And
please stay within 10 minutes if you can.
that is the plan, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, and you pronounced it just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So here today to speak to you about the Building Efficiency 305 program, which is a partnership of City of Miami and City Energy Project, which is itself a joint collaboration between National Resource Defense Council and Institute for Market Transformation. So BE 305 is a collaboration of Greater Miami and the beaches, but it's meant to improve efficiency of energy and water usage through tracking, benchmarking, transparency, retuning, and auditing of building energy and water consumption. So energy and water benchmarking is a process of measuring a building's energy use over time. It allows building owners and occupants to understand their building's operational performance relative to similar buildings. Similar to efficiency ratings for vehicles and appliances, for example. It gives them a score on their efficiency, and it's an important tool for consumers and for operators. So retuning, as I just mentioned, is the periodic maintenance of facilities and equipment such as HVAC systems, pools, lighting, etc. And then auditing is a review of a building that's undertaken by a licensed third party, and the ordinance does not actually, and the program doesn't require actually any investments or upgrades that would be mandated. So our focus is on buildings, large buildings, because they can waste up to 30% of their energy and water due to inefficiencies and poor operations. So poor performing buildings can use 4 to 8 times more energy and water than the best performing buildings. And so this represents an enormous energy and cost savings opportunity. There's a lot of low hanging fruit here. So to address this, we focus on these large buildings, both public and private, residential and commercial. The only buildings that would have 5 or more tenants. So the city wants to lead on this, and we're currently moving towards implementing the benchmarking across our own larger facilities. So as mentioned before, the city's partnered with CEP, the City Energy Project, as well as with working closely with Miami-Dade County to maintain similar policies across the county, as the county has already done extensive outreach and expended no small effort in developing ordinance language, including forming a working group of local building industry leaders. So to put the program in context, the city of Miami Mayor Suarez has stated that our goal is to achieve a net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This also falls under the Resilient 305, Goal 1, Action 17, Objective 4, which is to increase energy efficiencies and develop an energy benchmarking and transparency ordinance for municipal and commercial buildings by the end of 2020. Additionally, it falls under Miami Forever Climate Ready Goal 4, Phase 1, which is to institute Building Efficiency 305 program, which requires public and private buildings over 20,000 square feet to track and report energy and water use through Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And larger buildings will be required to evaluate opportunities to improve the performance of their building every 10 years. Lastly, it falls under the Miami Strategic Plan for fiscal years 2019 to 2021, specifically Goal 2.5, which is to promote adaptive neighborhoods and buildings and develop policy and regulations to reduce impact of environmental risks and promote sustainability. So as mentioned, there are these 4 pillars of this ordinance. So benchmarking, transparency or reporting, and then retuning and auditing. So for benchmarking, all buildings 20,000 square feet and above will be required to benchmark every year using the free Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool, which is maintained by the EPA. And then all participating buildings will also publicly share the data with the city And then we would have comparisons of the Energy Star score. And then lastly, the retweeting and auditing would only apply to buildings that are 50,000 square feet and above, and that would be required to retune every 5 and audit every 10, provided they don't meet certain performance standards or one of the other exemptions in the current draft language. So currently, so we see here a map of the US cities, counties, and states benchmarking policies for existing buildings. There are now 31 US local governments with benchmarking and transparency laws, and 3 states that have adopted legislation requiring it, including Washington, California, and New Jersey, I believe. Our policy would most closely resemble probably Seattle's, LA, and Philadelphia's, and has other similarities with St. Louis as well. So the benefits from the program. So implementation of the program will result in economic benefits for the community, for building owners and managers, as well as for tenants and community members. For example, the program should result in building owners and operators seeing increased asset values and operating margins. Tenants would see lower utility bills and increased satisfaction with the building and unit. This especially applies to commercial buildings. And this feeds back into owner-manager benefits by decreasing tenant turnover, forgive me. And then the other aspect we had mentioned briefly was transparency. So without information about a building's energy and water performance, real estate consumers have no reliable way of distinguishing an efficient building from an inefficient building. So one of the largest barriers to transformation of this building energy market is the problem of information gaps, because buildings can be very complex and not all aspects are readily available for inspection by prospective buyers or tenants. So this increases transparency for the public as well. So we can see that in cities across the country, benchmarking has led to significant savings, measuring in the tens of millions of dollars annually. Additionally, BU through 5 is projected to save City of Miami building owners, managers, and tenants about $16.5 million over the next 5 years. I would like to say at this point that the savings comes actually in using the data that benchmarking provides, and then using that to help drive investments and pinpoint where across portfolios the best investments can be made. So now we get directly into the city's actual policy that we're currently working on draft language for. So right now we have about 372 buildings that would begin benchmarking in probably May or June of 2021. These are all the buildings above 100,000 square feet. Then we have another 394 that would phase in the next year, and then lastly a large chunk of about 1,000 buildings that would come in the year after that. And so here we can actually see the phase-in schedule for buildings of different sizes in each of the aspects of the ordinance. So we can see, for example, that 20,000 square feet and above would begin benchmarking in 2023, and then would not have retuning auditing, while the smaller buildings, 50,000 to just under 100, would begin in 2027 and 2032, respectively. Lastly, I'd like to say that we're currently in the internal process of working through this draft ordinance language. That itself comes from our technical advisors at CEP, from the draft annotated language, and from a lot of the work that the Miami-Dade County has done over the last 3 years to engage the public and get their feedback in determining everything from the size categories to the phase-in times and the violations and other exemptions for compliance. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. It's really exciting. Any comments or questions from the committee? Maybe I'll ask any next steps that this committee can help with.
Well, actually, I would defer to Alan on that one.
Yeah. This will eventually become an ordinance revision that we're looking to take to the commission in the November-December timeframe. When we get to that point, we will bring it in front of the Climate Resilience Committee so you can review those recommendations and then make suggestions for improvements or support the recommendation going forward.
That's great. Does anyone have any input for Alan and Jonathan at this point and their development of that ordinance revision? And thank you very much for doing that. It's an important activity for our city to do. So appreciate your work on that.
Thank you for having me.
So at this point, I'll turn it over to Alan. There's a bunch of different updates. Again, Alan, we're a little bit behind schedule. So I know there's a number of things you just are kind of informational. So if you want to just go through each of those, and if you can, maybe in 15 minutes, kind of hit the high level points. And I know there's some things you want to defer to the next meeting anyway. So go ahead, take it away.
And I'll keep it under 10, but I'd like to start out by saying we were talking about heat resilience. And on August 4th, the city of Miami joined the Extreme Heat Resilience Alliance, which is an international alliance with about 30 different global partners. It's being spearheaded by the Atlantic Council. And part of the goal is to address heat resilience along with what we're calling the Name the Wave campaign, to try and categorize heat waves like you do hurricanes and tornadoes. So it's just kicking off, but we will be partnering on that over the next couple of months, and we'll give you more information as it evolves.
I'd like to also encourage you to keep Robert looped in on that, because I think this is great insights on how to implement those kind of things on the ground. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have 4 items to quickly go through. The first one is everybody should be aware that we are in the budget cycle. So the first reading happened on Thursday of this week, on the 10th, I should say last week. And our resilience efforts were supported in that. Part of, though, as you're aware, is the integration of the Office of Resilience and Sustainability in the Resilience and Public Works Department. And so if you have any specific questions on it, there was a lot of comments that came out in the budget process as part of the public comments. And some of those are being changed and addressed, and you'll see some revisions when we have the second meeting, which is on the 24th of this month, starting at 5:05 p.m. The next thing is Rachel talked a lot about the Biscayne Bay Task Force. A lot of her presentation talked about the short-term steps that were being taken in order to address the water issues and the fish kill. But the real solution comes from a long-term plan for Biscayne Bay. And so on August 31st, the Biscayne Bay Task Force report was presented to the county commission, and its recommendation is accepted. It has a total of 62 different recommendations, which address everything from water quality improvements, governance, infrastructure requirements, using of habitat, watershed habitat and natural features, dealing with marine debris, and a lot of education, outreach, and funding requirements. That is something that you may wish to have a presentation on with more details. It definitely will be driving a lot of the improvements that we'll be making in the Stormwater Master Plan. And a lot of things that Rachel was talking about that we need to be doing, we are kicking forward in our Stormwater Master Plan when it comes to the mapping, bringing in more environmentally friendly features within the stormwater system. But I think it would be very helpful for this committee to get a presentation on the Biscayne Bay Task Force recommendations. The third thing that I wanted to bring up was the Army Corps of Engineers Back Bay study. You should have all received a copy of the letter that the city submitted to the Corps of Engineers. That was our suspense for the close of the comment period was on August 19th. We've had a couple meetings with the Corps since then. They're still going through the comments and trying to reconcile the views that were expressed and some of the concerns. And so I hope that we will see some changes as the project is moving forward. But I do appreciate all the comments that you all gave when we had that discussion earlier. And the commission had a lot of questions and recommendations that basically became the format for 14 recommendations that we sent to the Corps to improve the plan or change it. And the last thing is I'm going to turn over to Alyssa Freeman, and she's going to give you a very quick update on the carbon mitigation plan. It's been a huge point of interest among not only this committee, but a lot of the public. And so we're at the point now to kick off the discussion, and it's something that we'll definitely be scheduling a larger briefing to you in the near future.
Thanks, Alan. So just super briefly, we have completed negotiations and we can announce that AECOM is going to be the city's partner in developing the greenhouse gas mitigation plan. So the project team involves staff that were involved in the Resilient 305 plan. So they're very familiar with working with the city in our office. So it's really great to have that continuity going through our line of work. We will be utilizing technical assistance and tools from both AECOM and C40 cities to complete this project. As Alan mentioned, we have AECOM scheduled to give a more in-depth presentation at the October CRC meeting. So we're meeting this week to kind of flesh out more of the details. But I'm going to just provide a very basic scope of work, just so you have some ideas and can generate some questions that you might have for the next meeting. So the deliverables of this project would be greenhouse gas reduction goals and an implementation plan for the city, as well as green economy goals and strategic initiatives that they will recommend the city to take. The plan is to launch the strategy in April 2021, sorry. The timeline could be more expedited, but we would have to cut out significant community engagement. We didn't want to do that. So that's the timeline that allows us to keep community engagement involved in the process. The goal for the plan is to have the city meet carbon neutrality by 2050, but the plan is going to be organized so that way the steepest reductions happen by 2035. The process is we're still mapping out, what the whole project plan is, but some aspects will include internal working group, a workshop with you all when we get further down the line. The city will be leading on community engagement, so I welcome anyone who's watching. If you have any feedback, any thoughts about, or you want to be involved in this community engagement process, please reach out to us, resilience@miamigov.com. And also they will be conducting research such as a business as usual forecast for 2035 and 2050, cost benefit analysis, prioritization matrix, all of that. So it's a very comprehensive project. It'll be, a very intensive project over the next couple of months, but we're looking forward to delivering a high quality product for the city.
And so that is a very quick overview of 4 high priority topics that we have that we are working on, and would love to answer any questions that you may have on them.
Thank you both for being super informative and super succinct all at the same time. So now let me turn to the committee and see if do people have thoughts on any of those items, comments, questions, feedback? Jose. We can't hear you. Uh-oh. Can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you, Wayne. Yeah.
Okay.
What's that? Did you have something to say? Maybe while Jose is sorting out his technical. Wayne, did you have a comment?
No, I didn't. I just thought you were trying to get me. I had it on mute, so I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Okay. It looks like he's logging off and logging back on. While we're waiting for him, any other comments? Keelan, Patrick, Robert. Patrick, go ahead.
I think I love the idea of the named heat wave concept. I think that's a really cool idea. And one thing, and it was just sort of thinking about it from that presentation regarding the effect of heat on pregnancy is I think that oftentimes we look at resilience and resiliency as a subject that mostly affects infrastructure and economics. And when we think of storms and flooding, we can think of damage to infrastructure and economics, where heat is really more of a human problem. And I think that it's a really great and very clear example of how when we talk about resilience, we really need to be building resilience for people. And I think that's something that we've always sort of struggled with and debated on over the years. But I think that, at least for me, the topic of heat, the idea of naming heat waves and using it almost metaphorically to show how we need to make decisions that protect human life, not just infrastructure, is a really powerful message to kind of capitalize on and push into our community. So I applaud that effort.
Thanks, Patrick. I do. Yeah, I think that that's something that we're going to need to keep taking on this committee as awareness of that issue is increased in this in our community. Jose, you're back.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
So this was to the earlier point by Rachel Silverstein on the properties that aren't in compliance with stormwater runoff. And interesting enough, when you look at the C7, it all bisects this area that is of lower income. And not only are they low, not only is it industrial, but it's also smaller plots of land. You know, when you go further east, you get the larger, well, not acreage, but the larger square footage. There, you know, already these areas have septic tanks and they don't have the money to connect it. And now I just hope that we have more of a solution. Now, whether that's we try and push for permeability or an option of permeability with even concrete, which will not be enough either. But there has to be something in the Palapata, Liberty City, Hialeah area that is right next to, that's like a mix of industrial and not, and is low income. Because it's heartbreaking for us to say, well, you have to comply and we're going to take part of your house away because it can't comply. I know the city's working on the street tree master plan, which is a different way of thinking for a lot of this. But I think we need to start really attacking that problem. And I don't know how to do it. I'm just saying it's a big problem.
Patrick?
Sort of following up on that, Jose, I totally agree with Jose. And I thought that Rachel's presentation was pretty staggering, especially given the historical context of how this has really been a known problem for a really long time. And I think as a community, we should look at our inability. We should look at the inability to have solved that over multiple generations as really something that's, I would say, rather disgraceful. And we should really kind of take that as a mission that we really need to address. Now, I know it's not simple by any means. And my question, and it's sort of following up on Jose's point, with stormwater, my question for Alan, with the stormwater master plan and projects that are going to already go into communities and either fix roads or put in pipes or replace aging city infrastructure, is there an effort to try to identify if any of those projects are near septic tanks that could be connected to sewer and somehow creating some type of cost savings opportunity to break ground and do that project at the same time as other things? Is that like a feasible strategy?
Not so much as you would think. Within the city of Miami, there's only about 1,600 septic tanks. Okay, you have a clump down in the Coconut Grove area, and then up in the northern part, I can't remember the community, but it's near the Little River. There's a small clump there. Any type of wastewater projects really would have to come from the Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer Department. And if we can overlap with the projects, we could maybe do something, but the opportunities for that, I would tell you, are very, very limited. The issue with the septic tanks is it's really at the county level, and mainly because Miami is a lot more developed than a lot of the rest of the county.
Right, but I do think that this issue that, that Rachel revealed also about the ability to come together and solve the problem, to bring county and city together on that, I think is important, especially if we're tasked with having a plan for stormwater, that we should be thinking about how it relates to these aging septic and sewer systems.
Right, and out of 1,600 septic tanks, there's only about 400 that are actually right now in danger of groundwater level intrusion getting into them. So those are the ones that, if we're going to be trying to tackle, the ones that we need to try and do right now. The others, there's a little bit more time to integrate in regular construction projects when they're coming up.
Well, that's good news then. I mean, then we have a more tractable problem maybe. Patrick.
Thank you for that clarification, Alan. And with 1,600 septic tanks in the city, that seems like a tackleable problem, and it's not one that necessarily will probably address the larger countywide problem. But I would see that as an important symbolic win if the city can really buckle down to try to address those remaining ones, and then use that motivation to turn to the county and be like, look, we're doing our part. You need to step up. We need to work together. What strategies are being taken to address those 1,600 remaining ones in the city?
Okay, right now, I'll be honest, there isn't a strategy, because when you're talking about 6 or 8 septic tanks on the end of a road and a $10 million project to extend the force main down to where it is, you just will not get the support from the water and sewer department. The cost benefit of it is so out of balance, and that's the reason why they have not extended the wastewater system into a lot of those areas. So right now there is not a strategy to tackle the 1,600, even though it seems like a manageable number. We have not made any progress on that.
Well, I do think that we should be continuing to have this discussion as the stormwater master plan gets developed. So I know that that's coming in the next, Alan, maybe you can remind me, is it October or November we're expected to hear from
We expect to have the draft recommendations from the stormwater master plan in December, and then we'll take a few months for packaging the report. But we'll know basically the capital projects, the recommendation for changing the standard for stormwater infrastructure. All of that part will be completed by December.
And there was supposed to be some community input in this fall, as far as I recall, right? Including from this committee.
Yes, and I don't have anybody from capital improvements here, but they are planning on doing another series of public meetings and coming to the committee as well. I think in the October, November timeframe.
Okay. Patrick.
Do you think, Amy, it might be educational for us to have someone from water and sewer come and give us a presentation that sort of overviews their assessment about these 1,600 tanks, just to kind of get us to the baseline of understanding of why the answer seems to be no currently?
Yeah.
Because that just doesn't seem, I get the argument about it economically, but it seems like that type of accepting that answer is why we have, magazine clippings from the 50s.
So, Patrick, if I can jump in, and I'm not gonna to try and be as politically correct. They've been spinning plates on their budgets. I mean, they have to replace all of the infrastructure. They have to replace the wastewater treatment plants. They have to put in a lot. It's so for them, it's kind of just whatever's about to break. And I feel bad saying that, but it's just for to add new things. FPL has a similar issue. So they're not putting in. It's not a consent decree, but they have a kind of a mandate whenever they're putting anything new to put it underground. But there's plenty of infrastructure that is susceptible to be destroyed in a windstorm. And it's kind of just like when it breaks, then they'll consider it.
But I think what Patrick's asking, I think that I'd like to hear from the rest of the committee. Do we want to ask the county to come in and help us understand what the problem are in our city and how far away from solutions are they? Like, for example, Alan mentioned that connecting, some properties are going to be very far from the sewer system, and that might be expensive, but is there low-hanging fruit in the Little River area that where we can that we can prioritize and also in terms of, we do have a bond that is intended for addressing some of these issues. I know it's perhaps not specifically septic, but it is for resilience, and this is a resilience issue.
Yes, however, the water and wastewater systems are county-owned systems.
Yeah, I realize, but they're in our city.
They are in our city, but we cannot use city funds to augment the county's.
Okay.
They're
fair enough, but I think we can advocate for our city to get solutions that will increase the resilience.
Oh, I agree. And whenever we are doing a project, we do try and work with the county. And, and Hector Badilla is actually, he's one of the attendees, but he was just texting me. That whenever we have a project, they always try and talk to Water and Sewer Department to see if we can collaborate, upgrading the wastewater or the water systems while we have the road dug up. It saves cost on both of us to do it once. It cuts down on the impacts to the residents. And he did confirm that they are planning on coming in the October-November timeframe, and they'll give you a briefing on the stormwater master plan and the details. So.
The county is, sorry, Hector is.
Hector will come and give us a briefing.
Thank you. That's great. And it sounds like the motion that Patrick is suggesting is that we invite the county water and sewer department to talk to us about this issue within our city.
Yeah, I wanted to additionally comment. I think the first stage, we just need to have a better understanding from the experts as, okay, here's the scope of the problem. And if you just had to think, these are the things we could solve, maybe these are the things that we have ideas, and these are the things we have no idea how to solve, like that would be a good baseline for us to just understand what seems to be a widespread systemic issue in the entire community. I think that would be a really educational presentation.
We can ask them. How do other people feel? Committee?
I think it might be perceived as a city kind of like trying to push the county in a certain direction or toward a certain action, because, like, let's be real, we're not inviting them to just be educated. We're inviting them because we've heard about a problem and plenty of us feel as if it should be fixed in a timely fashion, or there should be some kind of plan in place, right? And so I think we should just be careful understanding that the county it has a larger jurisdiction than we do in how we word our invitation for them to come and present. And what we want the outcomes of that meeting to be. It shouldn't just be well, that's not a good reason why we shouldn't be pursuing that course of action, because that's just tension with no actionable steps.
Okay, let me make a suggestion.
I have a comment too. I think you have to look at this at a little bit more global. The county is the umbrella over the city, and while we are two separate government entities, when the county starts dealing with septic tank issues and other related issues, the city is going to be taxed for that. Every citizen in Miami-Dade County is going to pay for that. So I do think that we have a significant interest, because tax dollars from the city of Miami that could otherwise be used for the city of Miami will go to the county to fix their problems, which have nothing to directly do with the city of Miami.
Okay, let me make a suggestion then. Patrick, would you be willing to write down your, sort of a draft agenda item and send it around to the committee send it to Ronaldo, and he can circulate it to the committee, and we can see if we can come down on a specific ask that makes sense from our broader committee's perspective. Okay. Okay, so last thing on our agenda is this open discussion item called Resilient Action Group Participation, and it's something Alan and I discussed after our last meeting, our August 3rd meeting, where we learned from the city manager what the new resilient structure is in the city, and this potentially exciting opportunity where there was a resilience action group that will meet on a regular basis and has representatives from all the different departments in the city. And Alan and I discussed I think that's where that's where the city can really make progress. And Alan and I discussed the possibility of whether this committee should have some kind of participation in that. And what that looks like, I'm not sure, but that someone from this committee could actually participate in that resilience action group. Alan, am I representing that in the way that you remember?
Yes. Okay. So when the mayor and the city manager were talking with all of you, one of the things that they brought up was the Resilience Action Group. It is a city staff internal coordinating body. It's the assistant city managers participate, several of the department directors from planning, zoning, parks, public works, capital improvements. That's where we come together and coordinate our activities and what the staffs are working on. So the mayor had offered to open that up to allow involvement. The issue is that if you come to that and it's not a sunshine meeting, it's a staff coordinating meeting. And so we could not have two people from this committee in that forum at the same time. And Jose is already a part of it. So it does inflate some complexities for us if you wanted to become part of that forum. And I didn't step out when you mentioned it earlier. But it does create a sunshine issue challenge to open that one up. One of the things that the mayor also talked about was trying to get more public involvement and opening up to the public. And we're looking at some other ways to do that, to get resilience out in the public and get more engagement going. But I think those are the two main pieces that we talked about when the mayor was meeting with you last month.
Well, that's good news, because then Jose can be our representative on the committee. Or at least you can be able to reflect back to us how that group is evolving and what they're taking on, the progress that they're making, their barriers that they have, and any ways that this committee can help assist that.
No problem. There is definitely we can organize if more members of the public want to go. I can always step out, or vice versa, send in comments, gather comments from everybody. Mm-hmm. Having Zoom around and Teams opens up the possibilities a lot for engagement. But happy to report back.
So how often does this committee or this group meet?
It's a monthly meeting that we have.
Monthly?
Yes.
So can we ask for a monthly update, Jose, from you on that committee? I mean, obviously Alan is on it as well, but, and I realize that you have a specific role on the committee as whatever your other role is. I mean, is it possible to wear two hats in that? And I see Zara joining us now.
Yeah. Dr. Yaquala may opine about that.
Oh, Zara, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I've been on a watching brief. Good evening. I apologize for my late entrance. Actually, we can give you more than a monthly brief, and we're welcome to have members of the committee participate in these meetings. And just for the general information, Alan Dodd is the leading city rep for the Resilient Action Committee. So I believe Alan is available 24/7. If I'm not stepping out of my comfort zone to say that Alan can always give a brief on any issues or any matters of concern to any individual or the entire city at any time. So giving you a monthly update is just a given. We will do that. If you need more than a monthly meeting update, I believe Alan will always provide that. So I welcome the committee members to participate in our internal meetings. Resiliency is something that is of general importance. It's something that we take very, very serious in the city. It's something that I even participate in weekly meetings because we believe in it, we want to practice it, and want it to be part of our life. So please feel free to ask for any update at any time. We will volunteer and we'll oblige you with that.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I mean, what I would say is that, so we have two members of we have a member of our committee who's a standing, sounds like member of that Resilience Action Group, which is good. And of course, Alan will be giving us monthly updates on many things related to resilience. But the idea was also that the committee has input in that Resilience Action Group. And while Alan is actually not a committee member, but Jose is, so that's good.
Actually, if I may come in, I will also ask, and I will definitely make sure that Robert, another member of your committee, will be part of this process. So now you have two members from the city. If any non-city staff wants to be a member, you're welcome to participate. We'd love to be transparent, and we hope and we are aiming to make it transparent.
Great, thank you. That's exciting too. So we have lots of representation, and I hope you and Robert and Jose will make sure to bring as much as you can from the committee to the Resilience Action Group, as well as the other way around, getting briefed from them. Okay, so we are at near the end of our agenda. We have a public comment period, which is a little bit awkward online because I don't know, Ronaldo, how do we handle public comments at the end here?
So what I'll do is I'll check if any written public comments, any other ones have come in. Just give me 1 second. So we don't have any new public comments, any written ones. So that's about it for public comment.
Okay. We have our next meeting is scheduled for October 5th, which is going to be online again. And if there are any issues, because we've run over time, but from the committee that you'd like to get on the agenda, you don't feel like we sufficiently covered, please reach out to Ronaldo to get the agenda items while they're fresh in your head now. And if there's nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, Jose.
Second.
Adjourn.
Second.
And Wayne is seconding. Are there any objections to adjourning? Thank you all so much for a productive meeting. I look forward to seeing you again in a month, and have a good night. Be safe, be well, take care.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.